So have you heard Patrick Kane's going to get absolved from everything? I think I'm going to go get some donuts soon.
I don't know about you, but John Tortorella is back in business. Captain America, more like Coach America.
Coach is coming to D.C. this week.
And
Live from Mass Ave, this is SportsZone.
Hello and welcome to week 2 of SportsZone. I am Deepak Bhagat and I'm joined right here with Justin and Vince. This is your college football segment on the main panel. And so basically we'll start off with the fact of obviously college football is always full of upsets, guys. But regardless, it's always just a whole lot of fun watching these teams. Either you'll get really high scoring games, really low scoring games, or just one team blowing the other completely out of the water. And so basically, I'll go to you first, Justin. Based off the action that we saw this weekend, what would you say the one game that stood out to you was?
Well, there's a few games that stood out to me. The one game that everybody's talking about is clearly Alabama-Ole Miss. Alabama was a top 10 team. They they lost to Ole Miss this weekend. So that was probably the biggest game. Another game is USC, who's ranked number 6, and they lost to an unranked Stanford, which is another game. One was SEC, and then the other's on the West Coast. So those are my 2 games.
All right, Vince?
I think we'll deviate a little bit from there. We'll stay in the SEC, though. LSU, for the second straight week, defeating a ranked opponent, Auburn. This was an Auburn team who just escaped a week ago against Jacksonville State, so maybe not as good as their ranking, number 18, suggests. And LSU really dominated start to finish and maybe showing that it's going to be a 2-horse race in the SEC after Ole Miss kind of asserted themselves with their victory over Alabama.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just go back to the Stanford and USC game. Justin, you came out of the gate and you saw, USC started off with the lead. It was a good lead, but ultimately there was a big second quarter by Stanford where they scored 17 to USC's 7, giving them a pretty good advantage right there. You have, I believe it was at that point 17 to 10 going into the second half of the game. So it's always a matter of just the back and forth there. But then you have the other games where it's just a complete blowout, like the LSU game. Or a game where, the scoring just keeps happening. I mean, Bama and Ole Miss were fairly close. I believe it was 43 to 37 as a final right there. And so just going off that, I guess I want to gauge your interest in the upcoming games in the current rankings as they stand. USC dropping from 6th all the way down to, I believe it was 19th at this point, and then Ole Miss trekking its way up, tied for 3rd with TCU. So Vince, let's go to you first about where you see week 4, where you see these rankings lining up and how you see that playing out right there.
I think it's going to be really interesting when we go to the West Coast in the Pac-12. USC was tabbed as potentially a playoff, a Final Four team, and they lose early. And Stanford, after their week 1 loss to Northwestern, was kind of pushed aside and said, maybe they're not going to be a contender. But so now we've got several ranked teams in the Pac-12. You've got USC still ranked, Oregon's in the top 5, UCLA escaped BYU this week. They're also in the top 10. Stanford's asserting themselves as well. So I feel like that's going to be kind of an interesting, it's always wild out west, but especially now you've got 4 teams who could potentially make a run, and knowing that one loss, maybe you're still going to get in as long as you win the Pac-12. That'll be interesting to watch, not just in week 4, but going forward.
And Justin, I want to switch it up with you. Bama losing. We talked about this already, but is this the end of an era for Nick Saban and for Alabama's diehard fans?
You can't say it's an end of the era because Alabama's always going to be a powerhouse. Nick Saban has proven himself to be a great coach. Alabama lost last year a couple upset games. Ole Miss is a good team. All the SEC teams are good. So I don't think it's the end of the era. But a sleeper team in the SEC is Georgia. They have Nick Chubb running the ball. They dominated South Carolina. Their defensive line didn't give South Carolina anything, and their offense dominated South Carolina too. So I think Georgia is a team to watch. And
you just mentioned Nick Chubb. I now want to move on to our final point right here, where it's also it's still early, but Heisman contenders. I mean, we've seen teams that showcase their stars week 1. I mean, you go to Penn State, you see Christian Hackenberg. You think he's going to be like a big #1 guy right there. Ohio State has a plethora of guys who can always contend. Same with Alabama. But Vince, who do you see right now as your top contender for the Heisman?
I think he separated himself this week with a dominant performance, and that was the LSU running back Leonard Fournette. His freshman year, he was supposed to be a Heisman contender. He flashed the Heisman pose after his first collegiate touchdown. Didn't really pan out. Started picking up at the end of last year, had 2 games over 150 yards rushing this year, and I think 238 yards, 3 touchdowns against Auburn. That really solidifies himself as a contender.
Justin?
I'm going to go with Nick Chubb.
Okay. Just a dominant run game right there down in Georgia.
Dominant run game. He was behind Todd Gurley. He comes out. He's played great.
Yep.
And I'm just going to go with Nick Chubb.
And I'm going to go with Trevon Boykin from TCU. Obviously, TCU is still ranked number 3, and they are just continuing to hold that position right there. But for now, that's all the time we have on the college football segment. So for Justin and Vince, I'm Deepak. More SportsZone coming your way.
Hi, I'm Rachel here with Ryan, and welcome to Ice Time. We're going to start off today's segment talking about the big John Tortorella going to be named tonight on ESPN as the USA hockey coach for the World Cup. What do you think?
John Tortorella finally making his way back onto the coaching scene at any level. It's been a little bit of a hiatus since he's coached the Rangers, but John Tortorella's been a great coach. He's a Stanley Cup winning coach.
Yep.
It'll be really exciting to see what he does with Team USA. He's going to have to follow in the footsteps of Dan Bylsma at the Olympics. And he's pretty much going to have the same team. He's going to have guys like Patrick Kane, and he's going to have the stats needs of the world, and David Backus. He's going to have a pretty good team to work with for his first team.
I think it's going to be very exciting. He does lead all USA-born coaches with 446 wins. As you said, he did bring Tampa Bay to their one Cup win in 2004. I think his fiery spirit could definitely give the World Cup the shakeup we need. Next, we could start talking about Hockeyville 2015, kicking off in Johnstown, PA on September 29th.
Hockeyville is a big program that USA Hockey has really pushed. It was promoted by Ron DiGregorio, who is the past president of USA Hockey, who's actually this year was just inducted into the USA Hockey Hall of Fame. Hockeyville is pretty much a chance for a local town to receive money from USA Hockey in partnership with the National Hockey League to rebuild their facilities. So it's only fitting that it would be in the birthplace of the movie Slapshot that the War Memorial would finally be receiving about, I think it's almost $250,000 to really revamp that rink. And I think the organization in Johnstown, PA is going to be really excited for it, and they're going to make some very good progress with it.
Very excited. You should tune into NBC Sports Network on September 29th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You'll get the Penguins versus Tampa Bay kicking off that preseason game. Next, we're going to talk about hockey's biggest scandal lately, Patrick Kane. He's a superstar on the ice, not so smooth off the ice. His grand jury was dismissed last week, hoping to reconvene in a month. This week they found out there was no DNA of his found out in the rape kit. How do you think training camp's really taken that?
I don't know. I think it's been a very big distraction for the Chicago Blackhawks, especially when they're coming back from winning the Stanley Cup, and they're missing a lot of key faces. Patrick Sharp is no longer on the team. Antti Ranta is no longer on the team. There's a lot of guys that they're relying on to really fill that void, and Patrick Kane is going to be a very big distraction. But
it's unfortunate. I hope he doesn't end up like Tyler Sagan did in Boston. That wasn't a fit, and maybe it's time this superstar find another regime. We'd like to preface some outdoor hockey games for you this year. The first one coming up will obviously be the 2016 Winter Classic, hosted by Bridgestone in the NHL. That will be at Gillette Stadium, January 1st. Bruins versus the Habs. What a great rivalry to have.
It's the oldest rivalry in hockey, and none more fitting to take the Winter Classic stage. I'm looking forward to the 24/7 on those two teams. I think we're going to get to see a whole lot of guys that we normally would not see. You're going to see the Zdeno Chara and guys like PK Subban off the ice. And it's going to be a really interesting 24/7 for this game.
It's going to be exciting. All of them in one hotel. Wonder what's going to happen off the ice. Next, we also have 2 Stadium Series games, Coors Light and NHL 2016. First one is February 21st, Wilds versus Blackhawks at the TCF Bank Stadium. That is at Minnesota, so the college crowd's going to be absolutely nuts.
Oh, the Golden Gopher faithful are now going to be at Minnesota Wild Hockey. Chicago, once again, in another outdoor game. Owner John McDonough has done a great job with that. And it should be a very interesting game, the bordering states. It'll be a very good game. I'm looking forward to it.
I like it when they can kind of play into the outdoor hockey. The spirit of the local suburbs really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have on February 27th, Avalanche versus the Red Wings at Coors Field in Denver. What do you think the altitude's going to do?
I don't know what the altitude's going to do, but it's going to be a lot harder for those guys to skate, especially in the cold. Especially the Red Wings. The Red Wings are the ageless wonders, but you're starting to worry about guys like Pavel Datsyuk, Johan Franzen. Those guys are old now in the NHL. It'll be very interesting to see how they can handle the altitude and the cold at the same time.
Put these dates in your calendar because press conferences are coming up. The throwback jerseys are being revealed, and you definitely don't want to miss these. As of now, there is no Heritage Classic planned. It was tentatively set to be in Winnipeg, but right now the NHL is saying that they might just skip it this year and move to 2017. And with that, 16 days till regular season. Get pumped.
Hello and welcome back to SportsZone. This is going to be going for two, our football segment, and week 2 of the NFL season now in the books, and boy was it a big one. We got lots of news, lots of scores to get to. We're going to start with probably the biggest news of the week, which is Tony Romo, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, broke his collarbone for now the second time, his left collarbone. He'll be shut down at least 8 weeks. So that's the biggest news part of the story. What do you think the impact of this is going to be on the Cowboys' playoff chances?
Well, this is a huge impact. This is the second time that he's broken it. Last time 2010, and they don't have Dez Bryant. So without Tony Romo and without Dez Bryant and getting rid of DeMarco Murray, they don't really have weapons on offense, if you think about it. Brandon Whedon might be able to come in and make some plays, but he's not Tony Romo, and he doesn't have a blanket on one side of the field like Dez Bryant to throw to. So I think this is by far the biggest injury, and this might knock Dallas out of playoff contention, depending on how the rest of the team plays. It's up to the defense, and it's up to the backups to play good football now because they don't have their 2 best players, the 2 most significant players on their team that everybody was so hyped up about in the beginning of the season, week 2, and both of their stars are gone.
And they're going to have to rely on a running game that's still really unclear about who's even the starter. Joseph Randle, Darren McFadden, they both get touches, and they have a great offensive line, so they can be effective, but you just don't know what you're going to get, especially from McFadden, who can't seem to stay on the field. There's plenty of other big news stories. Justin, you've got a lot on your mind that you want to get out. What are your other biggest news stories of the week?
Well, Josh Boyd of the Green Bay Packers is a star defensive end. He broke his ankle last night, along with Eddie Lacy, who went out, and his injury is going to be determined next week. Jay Cutler's out, so the Bears, again, having quarterback issues, but that's not really a new thing after all these years. But the Josh Boyd one's big because they moved Clay Matthews from outside linebacker to inside linebacker, and Josh Boyd was that that outside threat on that defensive front. And now with Clay Matthews playing on the inside, they don't really have a premier edge rusher on Green Bay. So I think Green Bay is going to be fine. Their offense is too powerful. Aaron Rodgers is too dominant. They have great receivers all around. But Eddie Lacy being gone could be a big problem because he picks up key yards in the total offense when you need him on 3rd and 2, on 2nd and 5, and stuff like that. So that's a big one for me.
Green Bay got a little sloppy last night against the Seahawks, but they were able to come back in the 4th quarter. They struggled a little bit, though, leading up to that because they were trailing. It was 17-16, and then they got back in the 4th quarter. So it turned a little bit sloppy, but they were able to come back. So hopefully they'll be okay with the rest of the season. Rodgers will lead them.
You talked a little bit about quarterback questions. Now, Han, I'll turn this over to you. You want to talk about a quarterback question, a perennial quarterback question? The Cleveland Browns. And they're facing another one because Johnny Football, filling in for the injured Josh McCown, won his first career NFL game, his first started game that he won this week, and they're still kind of unsure about where they want to go. What do you think is the best direction for the Browns?
I think for the Browns, it's really, they got to key in on their offense, and they got to decide really what they want to do. If they're more advantaged doing a running game or throwing game, and that's going to be key in the upcoming weeks for them because they need to lock down their offense line.
All right, and we talked about the Cleveland Browns pulling off a victory. A handful of teams kind of flying under the radar that pulled off some interesting victories this week. The Jacksonville Jaguars beating the Miami Dolphins, who many had as a sleeper in the AFC. You've got the Washington Redskins beating the St. Louis Rams. The Raiders beating the Baltimore Ravens. So Justin, I'll go back to you. What do you think is the most significant score outcome of the week?
I think the most significant win is Jacksonville, simply because they don't have any weapons on either side of the ball. And the Dolphins were a team that are supposed to be a contender. They're in a tough division with the Patriots and the Bills, so this is a huge loss for them. This was supposed to be a win. The Redskins, I don't know about that. They have more weapons, and the Rams also played well. So that one was a good game to watch, but I'm not as surprised. And then when it comes to the Ravens and the Raiders have 2 very good wide receivers, and the Raiders have 2 good receivers, and the Ravens don't have a good secondary. So that one didn't surprise me as much. I did expect the Ravens to win that game, But I'm not as surprised that the Raiders won, just because they do have some weapons on offense and they do have some weapons on defense, and they have a good linebacking core. Another game that surprised me though was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. Jameis Winston picks up his first win of the season and his career, and they went into the Superdome, which is notorious to be the hardest place to play in the NFL. And they went in there and they pretty much shut down the Saints. I know they started falling out at the end and turning over the ball and stuff like that, but they still went into the Superdome and pretty much dominated the game and shut down Drew Brees, who's going to be a Hall of Famer. So that's another significant win.
And that'll make an interesting segue as I go to Johanna. A few teams that are usually pretty good sitting now at 0-2. The Ravens, one of them. The Saints, one of them. The Seahawks, of course, went to the Super Bowl last year. They're 0-2. Which of these teams should be in panic mode?
I think definitely the Seahawks. I mean, that was their Green Bay against the Seahawks yesterday. That was just, the Seahawks really had the chance to take the win, and they didn't capitalize on that. They got the step forward, and they weren't able to capitalize on that and really take advantage of the fact that they had the lead against Rodgers. And it was their chance to show the Packers that they're still the team that they were last year, and they just weren't able to do that because the Packers, if we go back to the game last year, leading up to the Super Bowl, Packers versus Seahawks, Packers very close to winning that game, and the Seahawks stepped in. Wilson took over that, and in this one, Rodgers was just Wilson couldn't compete.
All right, and there you have it. That is all the time we have for Going for Two. Stay tuned for more Sports Zone coming up after this.
Hello and welcome back to Sports Zone. This is going to be our baseball segment. We're getting to third base, and there's a lot going on. Pennant races are in the thick of it. It is the end of September. We are that close to playoff baseball, guys, that close. So today what we're going to do is we're going to take a closer look at some of the most hotly contested races in the major leagues. And as coincidence would have it, most of them happen to fall in the American League. It's really, really a lot of it still up for grabs. So we're going to move across the country. Since we're on the East Coast, we'll start with the American League East. The Toronto Blue Jays and the Yankees are fighting for that spot. The Blue Jays currently 2.5 games above the Yankees, while the Yankees hold on to the first wild card spot and actually open a series, I believe, tonight, those two teams in Toronto. So Vince, we'll start with you. Take us through an outlook of the AL East. Who do you have winning it down the stretch and why?
I feel like they've come on, obviously, since they signed Tulowitzki and Price. They've been pretty hard charging, and they've kind of surmounted and gone over the Yankees, and I feel like they've had some success playing them in Toronto, won a couple of series against them. I feel like that'll kind of hold out. Toronto may be able to hold out. Usually side on experience and say the Yankees might take it, but I feel like youthful exuberance and Toronto trying to reach the playoffs for the first time in a really long time. The entire city of Toronto is going to be behind them, and I feel like that'll kind of carry them into the AL East pennant.
And just a follow-up question, do you think the Yankees will hold on to then that wild card spot?
I think they'll hold on to one. Whether it's the first or second remains to be seen, but I think the Yankees will slide into the playoffs as well.
And yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree. I mean, they got 2.5 game lead. David Price has really had the Yankees number throughout his career. Even with Tulowitzki on the shelf for a bit with a shoulder injury, which was suffered in a weird way. I don't know if you guys saw the collision, but they didn't hit each other that hard. Tulowitzki went down anyway. He's been out for a bit, but Toronto still playing pretty well, playing some good baseball. That offense is just ridiculous. So now we'll move to Hana, and we'll start moving across the country. The AL Central, which is another one, actually not really up for grabs. That one's pretty much decided. Kansas City running away with that one. But wild card is still significant. The Twins and I believe the Indians are both still alive for a second wild card spot in the American League. Hana, do you see either of those teams climbing their way through the standings to get there?
I mean, I don't know. We have the two top teams right now for the wild cards. I mean, I feel like the Yankees are really strong right now, and they have a real chance of of taking that spot and running with it. I do have a question for Vince, though.
Okay.
Vince.
Yes.
How does Toronto lose to the Boston Red Sox?
I mean, I feel like, teams don't go undefeated. You're going to have an odd game or two where you lose. The Red Sox are pretty bad, but, you can't win every series. The Pirates, who have been particularly good this year, can't seem to beat the Brewers at all. So, good teams struggle against bad teams. Maybe they have your number, so.
Yeah, the Mets can't beat the Marlins for some reason. Not really sure what it is, but they can't beat the Marlins, as always seems to be the case down the stretch.
The Phils can. Hey.
Not this year. Phils can't beat anyone this year. But we'll move on to Deepak. And we'll head over to the American League West with a surprise leader, the Texas Rangers, leading the division. I talked about them last week. Our new episode's posted. Go watch it. But I talked about them last week. Really came out of nowhere in the second half of the season. They've now passed the Houston Astros, who are also a surprise this year. Do you think the Rangers will hold on to win that division?
I think the Rangers do have a solid team all in all. For all these months, despite all the credit that they deserve, the Astros are still that team that's too much of a Cinderella story. I feel like it's just too good to be true, and that they will get the wild card spot. They will get that second wild card spot. I have no doubt in my mind about that. They're still a solid team, and they're playing well, especially with AL Cy Young frontrunner Dallas Keuchel just leading the way. I mean, a guy who last year came out of nowhere and has continued to dominate all throughout, and these young guys who are just performing beyond the expectations that were set for the team. I think Texas was really helped out with that Cole Hamels trade. I mean, yes, as a Phillies fan, I miss him, and I'm still wearing a Phillies shirt, as Justin has pointed out so often today. But Texas really did well right there, bringing him in. Yes, they let go of a whole lot of good young prospects, but considering at the time of the trade, Texas, I believe, was 4 games out from the AL West, from leading the AL West, and now they're ahead by about a game. That's pretty remarkable stuff. They also have their pitchers coming back healthy, So when you have a more complete team right there, things will click. The team's been solid. They've had losses throughout the season and throughout the past few seasons, but there's really nothing that's going wrong in Arlington right now.
And you look, going forward, especially, Hamill's still under contract for a few more years. They've got Yu Darvish coming back from Tommy John surgery next year. That could be a potent one, too, there. Darvish has been out all of this season, but you look ahead, Texas could be a team to be reckoned with. And the Astros really overachieving, I think a lot of people would say.
And mind you, they're doing it without really a huge contribution from Adrian Beltre, someone who's been solid throughout his whole career. And when he came to Texas, remember, that was the time when they still had guys like Nelson Cruz on the team and Josh Hamilton on the team, guys who were healthy at that point and who were absolutely crushing the ball. Now people have still relied on Beltre, more so for his glove now than for his bat this year, but they're doing it all without his, just superior offensive production.
Well, they're getting a lot from Prince Fielder, who really washed out of Detroit. And went to Texas kind of as an afterthought, but he's had a bit of a resurgence this year, which has been big for them. And the Astros are kind of the opposite way. They're just a young team that's somehow managing to do it all. Dallas Keuchel, you mentioned, Colin McHugh, and then the rookies, Carlos Correa, George Springer. These guys, a lot of people have projected the Astros would be good a year or two from now, but these guys have just exploded onto the scene, and there's a real chance Correa takes the AL Rookie of the Year.
And you watch this, too, that if they don't end up going as far as they can, this offseason, they're just in luck because they have all this money to spend. They can either sign guys to a longer-term deal or go out in free agency and get a big bat, big name pitcher.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that will be all the time we have for getting to third. A good discussion on the American League playoff race. It'll be exciting to watch down the stretch. Keep your TVs locked on some baseball. Pennant race baseball, good stuff. We will have more Sports Zone coming up after this.
Hello and welcome back to Sports Zone. This is going to be the second edition of our AU Insiders panel. I'm Dan. I've got Hannah once again. And we're actually going to talk very similar things to what we talked about last week.
Yep.
We are going to just start with some AU volleyball. They hosted a tournament here over this past weekend. They had UMBC, William & Mary, and UVA, the Cavaliers of Virginia, in town for a kind of a round-robin-ish tournament.
The AU Classic.
The AU Volleyball Classic. It was a good tournament, I think.
Yeah.
AU put in a pretty good performance until the last half of their last match.
Yeah, until Virginia.
They did play Virginia in the final match. They swept UMBC and William & Mary.
3-0 both in both of those. Yeah, they started off strong against William & Mary. Allison Capolino Sr., we talked about last week, she had a career high of 8 kills, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and some interesting even rotations from Coach Barry Goldberg. Yeah. A lot of freshmen getting some time. Alexandra Kazala, a freshman out of Poland, actually, I believe, went for a double-double in the match against UMBC, 11 kills and 11 digs. So that was quite an accomplishment for her, especially as a freshman, to get that exposure, get that playing time. That's going to be very useful for the Eagles, especially down the stretch.
Yeah.
To have that kind of depth
just they're available, so you don't have to just rely so heavily on Capolino or Sarah Katz.
For sure, and I think it shows a lot, for the rest of the season. Right now, the Eagles have started out really hot so far, and they're doing really well. And putting the freshmen in and seeing how they're dominating to an extent shows that down the line, once Capolino leaves, once the other seniors leave, who have had such great runs for the Eagles, in the next 2 and 3 years, the Eagles will still be a dominant team in a key. They'll still be winning tournaments, winning creaming William and Mary, taking down UMBC. It's impressive that the freshmen are able to step up and do this and take care of the game.
The one downside for the Eagles, as I said, was the second half of their match against UVA. Yeah. They won the first 2 sets. I don't want to say easily. They were competitive, but they won the first 2 sets. They looked like they were in a good position to win what would, I guess, technically be the championship game of the tournament. And then all of a sudden, the 3rd set, they really couldn't get it going. And then UVA took a very hotly contested 4th set. And then in the 5th set, I don't know if it was shell shock or what it was, but the body language was kind of not there for the Eagles, and UVA ended up taking the 5th set as well. They took those last 3 sets and ended up winning the match. What was your takeaways from that kind of performance?
I feel like the Eagles, they swept William & Mary and UMBC, so they take a 3-0 run for the first 2 games of the Classic, and then in the 3rd one, they take the first two matches, and then they come into the 3rd with all this momentum and with confidence that they'll be able to do this. They'll be able to, make it another sweep, 3 in a row. Let's get it done. And then they kind of falter slightly. They don't bring that as much heat as they have been bringing because they're more nonchalant about it. And that's something you can never do in sports. And we see a lot with high competitors like the Eagles volleyball team is that, once you get going, you might get a little too cocky, and then you end up losing your steam.
And again, Virginia, a good team, obviously a bigger conference, schools that the Eagles don't really get the chance to play that often because of the nature of the Patriot League. But anyway, we're going to switch gears to another tournament. AU men's soccer currently, I believe they just got back from Albuquerque, New Mexico. The second year they've gone to New Mexico. Actually, last year while in New Mexico, they upset the #1 team in the country, UCLA. Similar result this year. In their first game in New Mexico, I believe Friday, they pulled an upset over number 18 Loyola Marymount. That's 18 in the country. The Eagles went into the week at number 21 for the second week in a row, actually, and then unfortunately fell in overtime to number 17 New Mexico. So 2 very good teams, 2 pretty solid performances from a team, as we mentioned, that has been pretty good so far.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to fall in overtime to a 17th ranked team while you're in the 21st position, that's an impressive game. And, to fight into overtime, that's, men's soccer is putting up a good fight, and they got to keep doing that, keep playing hard with the rest of their season, and then they'll hopefully move up in ranks.
Absolutely, and I think there's a chance, certainly they cracked the top 20 this week, so that's something to watch for. Keep an eye on those NCAA rankings for AU men's soccer. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for AU Insiders. More Sports Zone coming up after this. Be sure to keep checking back with us. We'll keep you updated on all the goings-on at AU. And welcome back to Sports Zone, the second episode of Sports Zone. We got a full panel here to my left. Justin, Hannah, Deepak. You know Deepak. He's around. But we're gonna talk some more football. As we said, week 2 in the books. Plenty to discuss. This time we're going to go and talk about just about every division. Hopefully every division, we'll have time. And really kind of look at where we stand currently, what we think things are going to shake up like a little bit further down the road. We're going to start with a division that is a little bit of a dumpster fire at the moment, the NFC East. It's a bit of a disaster. The Cowboys are without Tony Romo. The Redskins have moved on from RG3, kind of. The Eagles can't put it together for some reason. And the Giants are just the Giants. So, Justin, we're going to start with you. No. I know you're very excited to tackle this one. What are your thoughts on the NFC East?
Yes, Justin.
I'm happy about the NFC East, Deepak, because the Redskins actually have a shot to take a commanding lead in this division. I know it's 2-0. Cowboys have 2 wins, and the Redskins are 1-1. But the Cowboys don't have their two biggest weapons on offense, and their defense is questionable. The Redskins' defense is a top 5 run defense in the NFL. They only gave up 10 points against the Rams and less than 150 yards in total. And the Redskins' offense put up 24 points against a defense that completely shut down Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. They sacked Russell Wilson 6 times, and Kirk Cousins only got sacked once the entire game, and it was on a 3rd and 18. So I think the Redskins can take a big lead in this division if they play like they did last week and the Cowboys slide down without their two biggest weapons. The Eagles have DeMarco Murray, who was the best running back in the NFL last year, like by far, and he rushes for negative yards now. So I'm questioning if the Eagles signed DeMarco Murray to utilize him or just to get him off the Dallas Cowboys. And Kiko Alonso on the Eagles is out for now with a knee that he just got surgery on, and he's their best defensive player. They signed Byron Maxwell in the secondary, who's getting burned every game. So the Eagles look very iffy to me. The Giants always look iffy. They start 0-2, but again, the Giants started 0-2 when they won the Super Bowl in 2011. So the Giants are there, and we'll see how it pans out on Thursday Night Football, Redskins-Giants.
Deepak, as our resident Eagles fan, care to comment?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's still early in the season. Like we just said, like Justin just said, the Cowboys are up 2-0 without now Tony Romo and Des Bryant for at least 10 weeks apiece. You have the Redskins that are 1-1, and I don't deny that they have a pretty solid run defense. I don't deny that. I think offense is always going to be a question though with them. Kirk Cousins, sure, he's been doing fine filling in right now for RG3, who's no longer the starter, but who knows how long that's going to last. Alfred Morris, he didn't get a majority of the points this week. I can't remember the guy who got
Matt Jones.
There we go, Matt Jones.
Had 151 yards rushing on 16 carries.
So, like, offense will always be what I feel an issue for the Redskins. Something that's always an up-in-the-air kind of thing. The Giants. They're the Giants. It's actually kind of interesting to see that they haven't won a game yet. I feel like with someone like Eli Manning, who is arguably still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, especially now that you have guys like Drew Brees getting old and not doing as well as he used to. Someone like Russell Wilson, who's not old, but who really has never been a bona fide superstar. He has had things go his way. The Legion of Boom helps. Marshawn Lynch helps. I'm surprised that they don't have a win yet. The Eagles. The Eagles. My team, 0-2.
Also, let the record show you said they were going 16-0.
Another thumbs up. Tonight, which is Monday, October 14th, the Eagles finally open up their season at 6:55 against the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm ready to see us go 16-0 on the season. We've also been projected to have the best odds to win the Super Bowl. So, yeah. Well, now they're going to go 14-2.
That's not happening.
No, that's not happening. But I'm actually getting flashbacks of the quote dream team that we were supposed to have 4 years ago when Vince Young was all like, yeah, dream team, and then Nnamdi Asomugha didn't pan out. I think Byron Maxwell needs to figure out what he's doing. I agree though that he is a good corner. I think he's had some trouble slipping up, and I would not say though that Kiko Alonso was our best defensive player. I would say that Malcolm Jenkins is probably one of our best at safety, or our entire defensive line, which is formidable. I mean, they got a pretty solid crew that's been together for at least 3 years now doing their thing. The linebackers, there are the injuries going on. The defensive backs have always been an issue for the Eagles. I understand we have no rings, which a certain someone here likes to point out to me nonstop. And then he says that's why our fans are the worst. But I say that we're still dedicated to our team, and I'll still watch that even if they are losing. Note that. Put that on the record. Week 3, though, is coming up, and I still couldn't tell you who's going to win the division. It could be anyone. It could be anyone's division to lose. And honestly, it could be the wild card team from the division that ends up going, farther than the others. So that's what I think about the NFC East.
Moving along, that was quite a discussion, but we'll move along to another division. We'll hop over to the AFC side, hit the AFC East just for a bit. The Dolphins were expected by many to be competitive this year. Even the Bills, a lot of people thought they could contend a bit in that division as well. I'm not going to address the Jets because they were 4-12 last year. There's a lot of room for improvement there. But New England put up 40-plus on Rex Ryan's Buffalo defense, and the Dolphins just lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, is it clear already that this is New England's division to lose?
Yeah.
Hannah, I'll start with you.
It's clear that New England right now is top dog, and they have a chance to really keep this position they have right now. And, Gronkowski, unstoppable. Tom Brady, you're not going to like this, but he proved unstoppable. And Bill Belichick, heading it all. They're really a solid team right now, and they're 2-0, so they just got to keep it going. And they built their momentum. They still have it from the Super Bowl, so they're just going to keep on going. I predict that they stay on the top.
Okay, good. So, we're going to switch things back up. With the Seahawks struggling in the NFC West, is there anyone else that jumps out at you as a frontrunner? Maybe the Arizona Cardinals, who looked phenomenal last year until Carson Palmer got hurt. Deepak, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, no, Cardinals are definitely that front runner in the West. I mean, Carson Palmer has been solid all throughout his career. He's still early 30s. He still has a lot in him, an absolute cannon of an arm. And also with just a wide receiver like John Brown, who's a small guy but fast. And that's something that Carson Palmer needs. I mean, I understand, for most of his career he had Ocho Cinco to throw to. But I think John Brown has the chance to be more electrifying than good old 8'5".
You still got steady as he goes Larry Fitzgerald, who, even if he doesn't have the explosiveness he once did, his hands are just phenomenal. He's made some incredible catches in his career, really. Due to time constraints, I'm going to move on to another division, I think. We'll head to the NFC South, which was a mess last year. There was not a winning team in that division last year. The Panthers ended up making the playoffs, I believe, at 7-8-1. One of those pesky ties got in the way. Justin, what are your thoughts on the NFC South this year?
This is probably the best division in football to watch, just because you don't know what you're going to get any given week. Matt Ryan looked pretty good in week 2 and in week 1, but the Falcons tend to dive off at the end of the season. You don't know what you're going to get from Jameis Winston. You saw a very bad game, and then you saw a decent game, but I don't think they have enough weapons on defense really to take them that far. I still think the Panthers are going to end up coming out of that division. They're 2-0 right now without Luke Kuechly this week, who's by far their best player on defense. And Cam Newton is more reliable than any of the quarterbacks in that division, in my opinion, other than Drew Brees. But Drew Brees has no one on either side of the ball, really. He has Brandon Cooks, and he has Marquise Colston, who's old. He got rid of Jimmy Graham, and his offensive line is shady, and he gets hit more than any quarterback in the league so far this season. So I think the Panthers in the NFC South.
I think that's a fair point. Even without Kelvin Benjamin, that team's explosive with Super Cam. So we'll swing back over to the AFC side of things. We'll go to the AFC West this time. Let's go with Hannah with you. Peyton Manning's on the tail end of his career. Yeah. We don't know what we're getting from Denver. Is there another team out in the West that you think is going to go toe-to-toe with them for that title?
I don't know. Oakland, San Diego, and Kansas City are all 1-1 right now, and so we have Manning kind of leading it right now. But things are going downhill. He's getting old, and that's pretty clear to see. So I don't know. I feel like Oakland can step up. The Raiders can step up, and try to get back on top of that record and bump the Broncos down.
Well, that would be interesting. I mean, Oakland's been... That's not happening. They've been bad for a long time. I'd be interested to see if they can pull it off. But that, unfortunately, is all the time we have. I think we missed one division, but that was really good. Nicely done, everybody.
The other division we missed...
Steelers.
The Steelers, the North... Yeah, that's... And then the Colts are going to take their division. So that's...
Those two are the easy ones. Not as much scandal there. But that is all the time we have. We have more Sports Zone coming up after this.
Hello, and welcome back to our final segment of Sports Zone. This is our favorite premier segment, Thumbs, where basically we go along the panel and discuss what's good in sports and what's bad in sports. I'm joined here by Rachel Hotmeyer and Ryan Siegel. So I guess we'll start first with Ryan. Why don't you go ahead and give us your thumbs up and thumbs
Great.
down?
I got to go thumbs up to the NHL season finally getting underway last night. The preseason has kicked off. I think it was with the Boston Bruins. Tonight, my favorite team, the New York Rangers, are starting, and the Washington Capitals also have their first game tonight. I have to go thumbs down, though, to the Dallas Cowboys. They now do not have Des Bryant and Tony Romo, and in my personal opinion, I don't think they have much of a chance left in the NFC East.
Okay.
All right, my thumbs up goes to Chandler Jones. Sunday with the Pats, had a career-high 3-sack game. He's on fire. You know, their lines are just really heating up, and I'm excited to see them build on this momentum. Thumbs down, Drew Brees just got a shoulder MRI. He was hit pretty hard, so I hope it doesn't take him out of the lineup.
Thumbs up. I got a few thumbs ups here. Thumbs up. I don't know. So basically, first goes to Jameis Winston of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Congrats to him on his first career win. I would say that he definitely has a habit of being a little out there. So stay modest. Stay modest about that, and maybe you'll have a good career.
Less is more.
Another thumbs up. Actually, I'll go thumbs down. Thumbs down goes to the Eagles. We lost again. We being, I'm a big fan. We lost to the Cowboys. We're 0-2. Just stuff's not, really going our way. But thumbs up goes to, the fact that Tony Romo's injured and out for at least 10 weeks. Also, for the record, the Eagles will now go 14-2 on the season. Super Bowl bound. Another thumbs up. This comes on a political note. Scott Walker, governor from Wisconsin, is dropping out of the race. And that's great because, first off, he's a tool, and I will not apologize for that. Secondly, he came to Philadelphia, went to go eat a cheesesteak, could not finish said cheesesteak. What are you doing wrong? You should have given up right there. Thumbs up also goes to Ole Miss upsetting Alabama. I don't know what that means in a long scheme of things. Because Nick Saban still is a legendary coach in the college football world, and he didn't have the best success in the NFL. But even in the NFL, he's well respected. So what's that mean for the legacy of Alabama and for their dynasty? Who knows? But yeah, that's all I got, and that's all I guess these two have for now. So thank you for watching Sports Zone. Thank you goes out to Dan Magnato, Vincent Solandro, Justin White, Hannah Wolfhart, Rachel Hotmeyer, Ryan Siegel. I'm Deepak Bhagat. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode next week.
16 days till hockey.
Woo!